Hello, I'm Jorge Briceño. Welcome to the final show of the UCLA Impact Urban Teacher Residency Series that has documented an innovative way of preparing quality teachers in the high-need areas of math, science, early childhood, and elementary education for urban classrooms. With me today is Anna Marie Francois, Director of the UCLA Center X Teacher Education Program, and many of the mentor teachers and apprentices whose work you've come to know from the series. Welcome, everyone.
Thanks, Jorge. The series has given us an opportunity to reflect on the effectiveness of the Impact program that prepares new teachers through a year-long residency in the classroom with a mentor teacher. Today, we're going to learn more from our current and former apprentices and mentor teachers about how being a part of Impact residency program has affected their teaching and, most importantly, students' learning.
Now, Secretary of Education Arne Duncan has said that highly effective teaching is crucial to student success. And today we're going to hear firsthand how the Impact program leads to highly effective teaching and better outcome for students. First up, let's take a look at Amber Green and her former apprentice, Leah Richardson, planning a science lesson for their class of 7th grade girls at Young Oak Hill Academy.
Basically, I want students to think, the big idea is I want them to explore a health need in their community and then come up with an idea or solution for that need.
In terms of crafting the driving question, what is the one sort of question that could be like an overarching idea for the whole project?
How can we create health in our community?
I like that.
It gives the students more agency of how can they actually create health or change, be advocates for change in their communities.
Okay.
So Leah and Amber, tell us how preparing your lessons engaged your 7th grade girls.
Well, when we sat down to plan that lesson, we really thought to begin with the end in mind. What is it that we wanted the students to ultimately get out of this 4-week project? And for us, it was really important that our students know more about their community and what our particular topic was that affects them. So in this case, health.
When I was starting to work on the project, the Community Health Project, I named it that because I wanted students to think, first of all, about what their community was and also what a health need in their community was. Really, in that sense, putting the agency in the hands of the students, empowering them to think that they can change how they help their world. So
That's great. I don't think most people realize how much time goes into planning what to teach and how to teach. Last year, Jeffrey introduced a similar project at Los Angeles High School of Global Studies. Let's take a look.
We're going to take some key elements of your research and use this to develop your guys' projects. Right? And this project is sort of a miniature version of the senior project that you guys are going to be doing next year. Right? You've done some research. Now you're going to use this research to support a project that you're going to go out into the community and you're going to do something that benefits the people around you. Right?
So Jeffrey, how have you taken your experience with project-based learning into your first year of teaching chemistry at Champs High School in Van Nuys?
I've taken it in a couple of ways. Some of the actual exact projects that we've done I've actually transferred into my classroom at Champs, but in just sort of the structure and the philosophy behind project-based learning, I've also taken a lot of those elements which I learned through my mentorship and applied that into the new lessons and the new projects which I'm developing at Champs.
Great.
That sounds great. Thank you, Jeffrey. Now, next up, let's take a look at Araceli, a 4th grade mentor teacher, and her apprentice Anisha at the Now Academy, who also use project-based learning to connect their students to rigorous academic content.
How much grass is he going to have to order so that he can turn the parking lot into a park?
What is that going to tell me if I add all of the sides together?
How many grass?
Oh, that's tell me how much I need for a round. But my question is, how much do I need to fill up this whole area?
Is that enough grass then? 50 feet? Nope. So it's not correct. So try to think of a different way. You can continue my pattern until you get to 11 rows. Or if you find it a different way, go ahead and use that.
Araceli, tell me, how does using real-world math help your kids better understand the concept?
Well, they're able to take what they've learned in class, the concepts and the ideas, and really apply them to their surroundings. And I always start a math lesson with word problems. And I make sure that whatever the word problem is linked to not only what I'm going to teach that day, but also connects to their own experiences.
Speaking of connecting, Anisha, tell me how you're connecting what you learn at the UCLA Impact or what you're learning at the UCLA Impact program to your teaching practice.
Throughout our coursework at UCLA, we learn theories and explore different research that show the effectiveness of making content relevant to students. So by creating real-world math problems, we're allowing them to access their prior knowledge and use it in a way to engage with content in a meaningful way.
Thank you both. In Alice's and Giraldi's math class at Virgil Middle School, students are also active learners, as we'll see in this next clip.
I'm gonna use my popsicle sticks to call on people. Okay, Daniel, can you come do the next one? What did you get for -3 minus 7?
I changed it, the negative into a positive.
The subtraction to positive?
And then I added it because they're negative and it was 10.
Let's see. -10?
Yeah.
-10.
Alice and Girardi, what strategies do you use to ensure student voice in your classroom?
You saw at the beginning her using popsicle sticks, and Giraldi set up the structure in the classroom so that the students knew that there was an equal opportunity for every student to have to speak, and when their name was called, they had the opportunity to come up and participate.
Right.
And if you noticed, Daniel made a mistake, but I ensured that I didn't inhibit his participation because the way I corrected it, I made it so that it was very comfortable for him because I wanted to ensure that next time I called him, he would be willing to participate once more.
Great, that's fabulous. Thanks so much.
Now, Edwin and Wendy have a similar approach to teaching math to their high school students at the Los Angeles High School of the Arts that gets them participating mentally and physically. Let's take a look.
What worked for you? Okay, now everybody's gonna say something. If what worked for you was that you were working with somebody on the problems instead of working on your own, then you say that. If what worked for you was that we let you use the calculators, then you say that. If what worked for you is that we gave you examples, then you say that.
Something that worked for me was when we were presenting the matrix, is having it organized in a way where it was easier for you to understand and to follow along. So it was less confusing.
Now, Edwin, Wendy, tell us why you have students talking about how they learn math.
Well, this is a testament to the effectiveness of the impact program. That's the strategy that we use with the mentees and the mentors, and so I've adopted it to the whole class. And so we have the kids reflecting on what they've done, and we believe that learning really happens when the kids reflect and they're able to talk about what they have done and where they're going to go from where they are.
I also think it's important to ask the how question. It's not asked as often as it should be, and it allows students to be metacognitive about their processes. And I think it's important to know, like when you approach a problem, what do you know about it, and what are you going to do with that information?
Thank you both.
Cesar was part of the UCLA Lead Teacher Certification Program last year and did a lot of work on figuring out how to simplify data collection on his preschool students.
How are we going to document what they're learning?
We're going to ask them questions about the activity that they are doing so we can record their answers.
What does it taste like?
Sweet.
Sweet? Another mark next to sweet. What does it taste like, Miguel? Sweet? Dulce?
Well, how do you think that the lesson can be done in another way that it will be beneficial to the children? That what you did is great.
To help further their development on that?
So Cesar, how does looking at student data help you improve your practice?
Well, the data that we collect on our students over the first 60 days and 6 months thereafter help us to understand how to develop better lesson plans for them using the DLM curriculum. We as preschool educators strive to create an environment in which the children will learn through playing. So therefore, the data collection is extremely important for us to meet their individual needs.
Thank you, Cesar. Now, when thinking about improving teaching, an important part of the impact program is reflecting on your practice. For example, Evan frequently debriefs with his mentor, Andre, as we'll see in this next clip.
What might be one idea that you would do differently next time?
One thing that I definitely wanted to do today that I wasn't able to was prepare questions for the students. So I had my content, I knew what my goals were and my objectives, but I didn't have a solid group of questions to ask the students. So I found myself having to come up with questions on the fly and wing it. And oftentimes formulating the questions and waiting for responses was taking up a bulk of the time.
So having questions ready, prepared, almost like a script or a repertoire of tools that would really enhance your conversation with the students.
So Evan, what have you learned from reflecting on your teaching that has improved your students' learning?
So reflection is a big part of my teaching practice. Being able to reflect after a daily lesson on what went well, what didn't go well, and how I can adapt my instruction allows me to better service my students during the next day's teaching.
Thank you, Evan. Now, it's apparent that you're all wonderful teachers and your students have obviously benefited from being in your classroom, and I think that you all deserve a round of applause. Now, Anne-Marie, the program is in its third year of implementation.
Right.
Tell me something that you know today that you didn't know 3 years ago.
I don't think that we knew 3 years ago how critically important the mentorship was going to be. When we recruited our mentor teachers, we knew that they needed to have strong content knowledge, great pedagogical skill, and a willingness to open up their classroom to aspiring teachers. What we didn't know was the amount of work it was going to take for the mentors to really become deeply reflective about the curriculum and instructional decision making, about the nuances of the classroom, about the classroom ecology, so that they could make that transparent for a novice whose novice eye might not see the kinds of things that they see, so that they could make sense of it and develop their own practice.
Now, I know for my case, if it had not been for somebody who adopted me as a mentor, I would not have lasted 6 months as a kindergarten teacher. So I want to hear from the mentors in the room today. Amber, you've been with the program since the beginning. How has your practice changed over the last 3 years?
My practice has changed since I've had 3 apprentices, actually 4 apprentices in my classroom. Really, since I've been a teacher for 11 years, I sort of was set in my ways in terms of the things that I did. And having apprentices come to the classroom with their ideas has been like invigorating, refreshing. My kids, I find, are a lot more engaged, and I have a lot more opportunity to sort of reflect on how students are doing in the room. It's also nice having another adult in the room. I feel like our kids really, really benefit having another person there to help them as we're going through the curriculum. And everything that the students learn and impact they get to bring back to us. So a lot of what happens between all the mentors and apprentices comes back to the classroom as well.
Now, I'd like to hear from Edwin right next to you, because you're a mentor as well, right, Edwin?
Yes.
So how has your practice evolved over the time that you've been a mentor?
Well, you know, being, I had taught for 20 years before I was asked to be a mentor. So I felt like I was somewhat set in some ways. And it was really, I felt challenged at first because I thought, you know, well, somebody's going to come into my room. They're going to be in here the whole time. And I felt that I had to be at the top of my game if I'm going to be effective as a mentor. And I found that I was learning as much from the mentee as I was hopefully teaching them. And I've had a unique experience, I think, because I get 2 mentees per year. So I've had 6 mentees in 3 years. And every time I just feel like it's a better experience. I feel like I'm really growing myself.
Now, I'm going to come to this side of the room, and I want to hear from Araceli. You're also a mentor. Same question. How has your teaching evolved as a consequence of being involved with a mentee and being involved with the Impact Program?
Something that Anne-Marie said was that how difficult it was to verbalize those nuances in the classroom, the classroom management and the pedagogy, and having to actually verbally tell your mentee every step of the way why you're doing something, and how you're doing it, and how you set your classroom environment, has made me a more reflective teacher, I believe. And having her in there and asking me questions about my own practices and why I do certain things, again, has made me a more reflective teacher.
Now, I'm going to come to to Cesar in a second, but Anne-Marie, I want to ask you, because you mentioned that this is something that you learned as a consequence of the program. How has the program evolved to take that into account now?
So one of the components of the program is that the mentors come together on a regular basis to talk about their practice with experienced mentors, right? So they're all pretty much on the same level, so to speak. And so they've taken the opportunity to coach one another, and in order to coach one another, you have to be really reflective, right? And so they get multiple opportunities to practice that so that when they go into the classroom with their mentee, they're more and more adept at doing it. Being reflective, we've always encouraged our students when they're teacher candidates at the university to go through the reflective process. But I think what happens with accomplished teachers is so much of the practice is automatic. All those years of experience enable you to make decisions like this. And it seems to the novice teacher that you're reacting. But really you're not reacting, you're responding based on years and years and years of experience. And so it's important for us to give our mentors opportunities to do this reflective process in structured ways with one another and actually practice it so that that too becomes an automatic part of their practice.
Now, I see Alice nodding quite a bit behind as you're making your comments. I'm curious to hear you're agreeing with a lot of what she said. How does that reflect in your practice?
I've been here since the beginning of the program, and I know that I myself have learned a lot in watching my mentee attempt to implement some of the things that I naturally seemed to do that to her was very, oh, well, this is just what you do. And then trying to articulate to her, well, I do that just slightly different because, and then having to learn myself, oh man, okay, why do I do it that way? And learning the reflective process, because I'm sure in my university I did it at one time, but it's good to revisit it. And so it's been a process for me over these past 3 years, being the mentor.
Now, I think I've heard from all the mentors in the audience, but I'm curious, have any of the mentees seen a change, if you had the same mentee over the period of time, in your relationship with your mentor? Oh, and I was going to come back to Cesar. So before we do that, I do want to hear from Cesar as far as your experience as a mentor teacher.
Well, my experience as a mentor teacher has been great because having somebody to come into the classroom and in a different environment than the ones that they've been through, it's been like a shocking experience, kind of. Because they come into the classroom and they see how the children are learning through playing, how they are interacting with one another, and how they're learning the basic social skills that they will need on going onto the elementary school grades and forward. So that reflective process have helped us to develop that understanding of the basics that the children need to develop better.
So thanks, Cesar. And I apologize I didn't come back to you. So now I do want to hear from any of the mentees. Have you seen that evolution with your mentor?
Yeah, so last year I worked with Amber, who's sitting right behind me, and I had a great experience working with her. And I think that our conversations definitely evolved over our time working together. You know, at the beginning, I think that just like Anne-Marie was saying, sometimes as a mentee, you're immersed in the theory and you have all these like glorious ideological ideas, and you think that when you're first talking to a mentor type figure that they're reacting rather than reflecting. And then that also took me some time to think like, oh, wait a second, she's not reacting. Has a lot more experience. She knows what she's doing and there are more layers. And then at the same time, I think that as I started to realize that, I think that we also started to be together more reflective about what we were doing individually and then also about each other's lessons, because I would often observe her classes, she would observe my classes, and we would really, talk about how each of us were doing, and I think it was really beneficial for both of us.
So some of you were actually apprentices when we started filming. What have you learned from your mentors now that you're teachers of records that you utilize in your classroom?
So I think I relate a lot to that question because now I talk to Alice a lot since I started teaching. And remember one of the very beginning, a couple months in, I texted her just because I would catch myself doing a lot of things that Alice did in the classroom. Mm-hmm. And it just made me realize how I was able to discover myself, but also I had a part of Alice inside of me. And I still do it. Like I made a comment to her earlier today She was such a chant person, and when I was in her classroom, I did not like singing. I was not very open to them. I was like, oh, I don't think that's how kids learn or that'll help them. But she embraced it, I embraced it, and now in my classroom, I feel like in my school, I'm known as like the chant teacher, like, oh, you have songs, teach me your songs. And so it just makes me so happy that a part of her is in my teaching, but I am my own teacher. So I combined hers with mine, and I think it works very well. So very lucky.
I love how you talk about how she inspired you, but inspired you to find yourself as a teacher, because the mentorship is not about you becoming Alice.
Exactly.
It's about you becoming the best Giraldi, the teacher that you can be.
Exactly, and then taking the little tips that she mentioned that maybe I didn't really understand when she was trying to mentor me, but now in my own classroom, I was like, oh, this is what Alice meant, and I see that, and I'll text you randomly saying, oh, I know what you mean now, or it makes so much more sense now that I'm a teacher full year.
That's awesome. Anyone else? Jeffrey?
Yeah, I think part of what I gained out of my apprentice year, in addition to everything I got out of from my mentor, was just being at the school that I was at. I was at one of the LA small schools at the School of Global Studies, and they had a really unique learning environment where it was a pilot school and a project-based learning school, and they had a nice philosophy on the way that they structure their lessons and the way that they structure their classroom. And I've been able to take that whole philosophy and take it to another school where the other teachers there don't necessarily use that same teaching methodology, but the administration is really open to it, and other teachers are really interested in learning about it. And it's just the idea of making things a little bit more, not practical necessarily, but relatable to the students about how the content relates to their everyday life, and then applying their skills that they get in class into what they do in their everyday lives, and making the end results a little bit more tangible than you might otherwise get.
Now, as I understand it, one of the unique features of the Urban Impact Program is its focus on social justice in the classroom. So this question is open to all of you, since you're all going through the program. Why is this so crucial to be invested in social justice education when you're an urban classroom teacher? And I particularly want to hear from somebody who we really haven't had a chance to hear from a lot. Wendy?
Yes. Well, I think the teaching for social justice is very important. I grew up in the neighborhood area. I went to the LA USD district schools. I went to Mr. Galan was my high school math teacher. And so coming back for me is very important, and instilling that, I guess, thought into our students also is very important, that it's not you grow up, you get rich, and goodbye community. It's you grow up, you study, you learn, and you come back. And I think that's very important for our social justice program.
Anyone else? I know, like I said, I know you've all participated in the program, so I'd like to hear from somebody else if we haven't particularly heard from you.
For me, when I think about social justice, I think about empowerment, and really empowering the students to empower themselves, really, and go back into their communities and to transform their communities and tap into the wealth of resources that already exist in the community, and work with the local community to build up and create change. So I think in the classroom, we just try to find practical ways to inspire our students and really push them to go back into the community, whether it be through service, leadership, or just however they can get in the community and just lift each other up and build.
Thank you, Evan, and thank all of you. Now, we could talk about this for a much longer time, but we have come to the end of our show. But before we go, Anne-Marie, I want to hear one more time from you. 3.5 years ago, you got a grant for 5 years for this project. What do you see moving forward as the potential for an urban impact program and the project that you have going on now?
Well, one of the first things we're going to need to do is we're going to need to secure additional funding to continue the program beyond this year. Investing in the preparation of effective and high quality teachers should be one of our nation's primary agendas, right? And so our early data shows that pairing an aspiring teacher with a highly competent, accomplished teacher over a long period of time really promotes the confidence and the competence of beginning teachers. And when those two things happen, you see student achievement rise, you see the quality of the teaching rise over the years, and ultimately that's what the purpose of teacher preparation is. Teacher preparation is the future of the young people in our community. And unless we get this right, and unless our government and our district and the foundations who fund teacher preparation fully invest in it, the achievement gap is going to widen, and the future of our young people is not going to be very bright. I believe we can affect it. I believe that we can change the direction of teaching and learning globally, nationally, and for our kids locally in LA. And that's what the Urban Teacher Residency Program is all about.
Well, thank you and continued success to all of you. I think we've learned a great deal about the UCLA Impact Program and the positive impact that it's having. I want to thank you for joining us.